There were three of us, myself, Tony and Matt. St Anne's estate was not open to the public, but we made it our own. We fished in the lake for perch and roach. We took whatever wasn't nailed down. The house burnt down in 1941, so there was plenty to take. Nothing of value, but we had great fun rooting around in the debris. We made nests for ourselves in the trees and caves among the bushes. We kept the corporation caretaker active, chasing us. Healy was his name. We became friends later. I had a small punt with a sail, so we sailed and swam all summer. School was a necessary evil which we were forced to attend. We remained friends all our lives. Brendan O'Farrell, born 1930. Creepy Forest by Brendan O'Farrell. I got my first introduction to the big outside world by being brought by my older sister and her friends to St Anne's estate, known at the time by the locals as Plunkett's, because it was the residence of Bishop Plunkett and family, who over the previous 100 years or so had developed the area into a beautiful estate, with lakes, woods and gardens, which can now be enjoyed by all since being taken over by Dublin Corporation and is now a public park. This was not the case in 1935, when it was still occupied by the Plunkett family and was a private estate. Starting at the last right-angle bend on Mount Prospect Avenue, a right-of-way known as the Styles ran across the estate, passing in a tunnel under the main avenue. After all, if you owned a place like this, you would not like to see the grate unwashed, polluting the view from the house as they commuted from the village of Raheny to the area of Dollymount. The right-of-way was bounded on both sides by trees and hedges, as though the traffic must have been almost non-existent at the time it was enclosed. It made whoever used it invisible to the occupants of the estate. About 100 yards along the Styles route, stone style at the entrance, just where it started to make its descent to go under the main avenue and parallel to it in the estate, was the beginning of Creepy Forest. Creepy Forest was the most remarkable place. Although I have gone back to it in adult life, alas, only 2 or 3 trees remain. When I measured it, I found that it was only about 60 yards long and 20 yards wide. You can take my word for that. When we played there, it was almost boundless. It had so many trackways and secret passages that in the beginning we were afraid that if you got lost in it, you might never be found. With my sisters and their pals, we squeezed through a hole in the hedge and silently entered the dark, forbidding forest, where sunlight found it almost impossible to penetrate. When you're only 5 years old, every bush and hedge hides an almost inexhaustible amount of things that rustle and scurry and squeak and run, bump and scratch and disappear just before you can see them. You know in your heart that it is a magical forest. We did not go very far for that first day because my sister said there are a lot of squoses. They are a cross between a squirrel and a mouse, and other things which are best left alone. I was almost certain that I saw something else. We started to leave the forest, and the nearer we got to the edge and could see the sunlight outside, the faster we hurried. Very soon we were running as fast as we could, and in the end we were all crying and screaming as we thought we could hear footsteps of whatever there was following us. Now and again someone would shout, "They're catching up on us." We would scream some more and run even faster until we could see Dollymount Avenue, where we lived. When we realised that we had gotten away, we pretended not to have been scared at all. Well, over the summer we made friends with all the watchers in the forest by leaving bits of buns and cake at the entrance of Mouse, Squash, Rat Holes and the Something Else tracks. Our little presents were obviously well received, because by the next day they had all been eaten, and nothing ever watched us or chased us again. We were always very careful, however, not to upset any of them, as we knew they were still there. The trees grew so close together that we were able to climb up one tree and then cross by the branches to another. This allowed us to build nests in which we could sit unseen by any passer-by and smoke our pipes, which we made out of hollowed-out chestnuts with a straw for a shank and leaves mixed with cigarette butts for tobacco. It is no great surprise that none of us ever smoked in later life. We discovered another use for our nests. The forest was used as a passage to the rest of the estate by the local courting couples. And as we all had older sisters and brothers, we were able to know that when they were meeting their loved ones, and so be in a position before they arrived on their evening walks together. The things we saw them doing were both entertaining and educational. We considered extorting money from them by blackmail, but they were sure to tell our parents, and we knew we would come out the worst in the end. Adults always sided with one another. However, we knew what we saw and heard, and it gave us a sort of secret moral superiority over them. In later years, when we were courting, we took very good care of what might be overheard, and we were especially careful when passing through the creepy forest.